Hey TYT, this is Nomi Konst. This morning, we woke up to some breaking news out of Spain, where the Catalonians went to go vote for their independence. This has been in the news quite a bit because the prediction is that they actually would win their independence from Spain. Except voters were met with police brutality, and I'm sure you've seen the images now of the videos and the images of voters being met with police force. They were hit with objects. The videos are quite revealing. And of course, Spain is a democracy. Spain is a member of the EU, and I think the whole world is shocked right now. So we have Paul Mason, who is a friend of ours from the UK, my recent trip to the UK. He is a columnist at The Guardian, and he is in Barcelona right now. Paul, thank you so much for joining us last minute.
It's a pleasure.
So tell me, you're in Barcelona. Let's talk a little bit about what this vote meant.
Okay, look, Catalonia is a region of Spain with about 7.5 million people in it. Now, relative to the Spanish population, that's about as big as Texas or California is to the United States. And like Texas and California, Catalonia, this place where I am now, has for many years toyed with the idea of going independent from the Spanish state. It has a separate language. The language is very popular. People speak it. The language was banned under fascism. So you can imagine the emotional appeal of the idea of going independent. It is also, a little bit like California and Texas, the richest part of Spain. It's the most industrialized. It's the most modern. Now, Catalan nationalism in recent years has wanted to have this referendum. It's been opposed both by the left and the right. So there are left Catalan nationalists, but there are also left-wing people who don't want to leave Spain and want to just try and turn Spain left as a whole country. But the Spanish repeatedly refused to let them have the referendum. So the regional government here, which has a bit like a United States state, that kind of level of power, said, OK, well, we're going to call a referendum. So the referendum was today. We think 3 million people voted out of the 5.8 million adults that there are in this region, and I'm pretty certain they will have voted to leave Spain. The problem is, and the pictures your viewers are seeing, that not the local police. The local police stayed out of it. The police sent from the capital, Madrid, went in and smashed up about a quarter of all the voting booths.
Under whose direction?
Well, quite clearly, the national government. I've just been watching in the main square the Prime Minister of Spain, Mariano Rajoy, take full responsibility. He even said the police acted well. Now, if you're seeing the pictures, these are not, even people who are involved in, for example, Ferguson or Occupy Oakland may recognize this kind of level of militarized state police brutality. Remember, it is being inflicted by people who in the Spanish police force have no love for Catalans. The enmity of what you might call official, the equivalent of a kind of WASP in Spain, your white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, is to be a Castilian elitist aristocrat from Madrid. Now, these police came from there. It is a bit, to be honest, the parallels are not exact, but the parallels are quite bad with, if you like, a sort of elite ethnic group going into police, a group who identifies as separate and different with a different language. It's not far off what Joe Arpaio was doing in Phoenix, Arizona. And yet the European Union, which I'm a citizen of, every European person is a citizen of, has said nothing about it. And so we're seeing a really serious crisis of belief and legitimacy here, not just for the Spanish state, but for Europe, I would argue.
And have they experienced this before? Has there been a vote in previous years with any sort of opposition like this?
Yeah, they've tried to have indicative ballots. They tried to have indicative referendums, but the government always ignored them. So this time they staged a full referendum and the government declared it illegal. So technically it was illegal. I've been on the streets all day. I've been to 5, 6, 7 balloting offices. Now, just to give your viewers a sense, you will have seen some extreme violence from the police, but in 3/4 of the places where people voted, the police never turned up. Now, where that occurred, you were getting massive lines 4 deep, 1,000 strong, round the block to vote in one place, and then up across the road, literally across the dual carriageway, there's another line 1,000 strong in another district. And those of us who study the history of democracy understand that in ancient Greece, in ancient Athens, that's what democracy was. You vote by area. It was an intense experience of interpersonality, of discussion, of art, camaraderie. Every old person who voted was cheered in and out of the ballot box. Remember, these are people who lived under fascism, so this is not academic for them. So I think I've seen a great festival of democracy here in Barcelona on the 1st of October, and also a very crass and stupid piece of militaristic policing.
Well, it's interesting that you say the EU has not responded. I don't know for sure, but is their defense going to be this wasn't a legal referendum and we don't recognize, and that's the excuse for the police coming in?
Yes, that's the government's excuse. And in fact, although the main opposition party here, the Socialist Party, has condemned it, they too have no love for the idea of a separate Catalonia. You see, my continent, Europe, is full of many nations, some of whom live in states that have borders that fit the nation, and many of them that don't. So we are well used here to the idea of national self-determination for minorities. And the argument of the Spanish state is, we'll determine whether you're a nation or not. My argument would be that if Catalan people who speak Catalan, identify as Catalan, do the folk dancing, sing the folk songs, have the name, these are all things that identify nations, as people from national minorities in America will fully recognize. If you identify as a nation and you want self-determination, it is international law says you must have the right to do that. So that's where we are. And look, the extent of the popularity here is, one of the most famous soccer teams in the world, FC Barcelona, probably the greatest soccer team. It openly came out almost openly came out in support of these demonstrations. They put on their scoreboard during the match today, democracy.
Wow.
There was the word on the scoreboard. The players came off the pitch, just as they're doing here in the United States with Trump and taking the knee. The players came off the pitch and just verbally laid into the Prime Minister.
Wow.
So it's politicized, everything. Sport is politicized, music is politicized. And we don't know. I mean, the night is 10 o'clock here. It's gone 10 now. We'll get the official results soon. The danger is, look, if you wanted to take down this referendum, you would have done more than send the kind of squads of 30 police in that they did.
Right.
You would have done a lot more. I think they didn't want to. I think what they're holding back the very serious amounts of militarized policing to do is in case the government actually declares independence. Because that would be like dropping the atom bomb on Europe politically. And I think they're holding in place the police in case that happens.
Do you anticipate protests tomorrow, regardless, just for the police brutality, whether they win independence or not? Just
remember today was not protests; it was just people voting.
Right.
There wasn't a single act of violence. I don't think a single act of protestive violence has even been recorded. I think there will be protests tomorrow. The issue is, however, the next move lies with the two governments. The Spanish government, does it try and arrest the government of this region where I'm sitting, which would be unprecedented? They've arrested a few officials, but they might try and arrest the government. And if they do, is there a general strike?
Wow. And
if that happens, what happens to the 2,000 militarized cops sitting on a cruise liner in the harbour waiting to intervene? If this was just a very peaceful country with no history of social strife, we'd be thinking it's all going to be fine. This was a fascist country until 1974. This country killed 300,000 unarmed civilians in prisons between 1939 and 1954. The era of Bill Haley and the Comets. This is not a country that has dispelled its ghosts with regard to authoritarianism, fascism, and of course the other thing is religious fundamentalism.
Right.
On the state side, on the side of the Spanish state, is a form of Catholicism that is very, very socially conservative and very prone to the kind of policing we've just seen.
That leaves the question of, okay, so when Franco fell and fascism fell in Spain, why didn't Catalonia just separate itself from Spain at that moment? What was preventing it?
they were given, along with the other big national minority, the Basques, who also have a separate language and a separate identity, they were given big autonomy. You know, the fact that they've got a regional autonomous government, they've got a language, they've got a parliament, they were given that. It almost became like the United States, a federal state. So that's why the other thing is that the labor movement, who came into being very rapidly after the fall of fascism, accepted, or as it were, a series of economic compromises that were very strong, like much higher wages, much better rights, much better trade union rights, much better rights to negotiate in the workplace, as a quid pro quo for never cleansing the Spanish state of fascism. The only fascists who went to court were the police members from the same police force we saw today, the Guardia Civil, who tried to overthrow the democratic government in 1977. They went to jail, but the old fascist generals, they just retired to their ranches, and their grandsons, now populate the state apparatus, the police, the civil service, the monarchy as well. So and remember, for young Catalans, on the streets today, I've been with 16, 14-year-old Catalans. And for them, this is not so much about a kind of a language and a folk tradition and a flag. It's about social justice. They don't believe they're going to get social justice under neoliberalism, and given the first opportunity to say, we don't want to be in your Spanish neoliberal state, thank you, we'll form our own, more liberal, more socially just state. They, just like the Scottish people who nearly did it as well 2 years ago, they said, let's do that. Time and again, we're seeing populations offered the chance to secede from neoliberalism, say, okay, let's do it.
Which is very interesting to me. That this is such a rich region, meaning financially well off. For those who've been to Barcelona, it's a beautiful city. It's very modern. The architecture is extraordinary. It's a very culturally rich and economically rich city. I find it very strange that they don't have the political leverage and the political power, given their financial leverage, to just dictate the policies for the rest of Spain from that perspective.
Yeah, that was the deal. It left the central, old, ex-fascist, always conservative Spanish Catholic state in charge, and it left the Catalans to get on with their own business. They're just a very, very interesting and very humane people to me. They remind me of Scottish people in the United Kingdom. They are also very kind of proud, and almost to the point where they annoy everybody, like Texans. Texans can be annoying to other Americans. I've noticed this. I'm not an American, so Catalans can sort of rub up their own way the rest of Spain. So that's been the problem really there. I just think that this has gone beyond cultural difference, though. What happened today? You see grandmothers, children, young people being battered by police, which is Europeans are not used to this. We have laws. We have signed the International Convention on Human Rights. We have a European Court of Human Rights, and I can probably guarantee that some of the cases we've seen today will go to that court. So it's shocking, and it's shocked Europe, I think.
Last question before we wrap up. Does everybody seem to be okay? I mean, these photos of elderly women, with bloody heads, I don't know how they'd be able to recuperate from that. Is everybody seem to be okay?
It looks like there's more than 400 injuries. I think that the policeman who leapt downstairs to jump on the back of a male protester, is on camera. It's a felony, even in here. So there's no justification whatsoever. I would expect, Spain has the rule of law. We don't have Joe Arpaio everywhere, so we have the rule of law. We would expect there to be prosecutions of those police. But everybody seems there's no dead people. I think someone had a heart attack, but from the violence, no. But the situation's only just starting, because the real problem is Mariano Rajoy, the Prime Minister, was unrepentant. He backed the police to the hills. And what that means is that if the government here makes another move, like saying, we won the referendum, we're thinking of of becoming independent, I would expect to see Catalonia then flooded with national law enforcement people. And there's talk of a general strike. There's talk of a declaration of independence. It would be
Wow.
unprecedented in modern Europe. So watch the space.
Really fascinating time to be watching politics in the EU. Given as our conversations, we've had several of these conversations on and offline about neoliberalism and the response to neoliberalism, and of course nationalism as well. Paul Mason, you're a columnist at The Guardian, also just a fascinating person. You know everything. You're like the go-to guy. Stay safe in Barcelona. Stay safe and send our love to the people of Catalonia.
Will do.
Thank you.